running an agency doesn't have to feel like juggling flaming chainsaws. At Schmidt Consulting Group, we help you ditch the chaos, land more clients, and even enjoy running your business again. No fluff, no BS, just strategies that actually work. Check us out at schmidtconsulting.group because your agency deserves better.
In this episode of Schmidt List, join us as we chat with Hal Reynolds, CEO of Disinvested Youth Gaming Initiative. Hal dives into bridging digital deserts through gaming, creating career pathways in tech, and transforming communities. Don't miss this inspiring conversation packed with insights and innovation.
Well, Hal, how are you doing today?
I am excellent, Kurt. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. So, Hal, tell the audience a little bit about the work you do and who you do it with.
So my name is Hal Reynolds, as you heard. I am the founder and CEO of Disinvested Youth Gaming Initiative. And the first thing I want to do is say disinvested youth does not just mean black and brown. It means anyone who is in what I would call a digital desert. Anybody who doesn't have access to internet, to gaming, to just computers or PCs, and really will be shut out of tomorrow's opportunities. I want to make sure we're closing those gaps. Minnesota, in an interesting space being 48th computer science. And so I built this company simply as a vehicle to change that, but also to meet our young people where they are. Who I work with, our sponsors are Morrison Construction, Comcast, and we have some partners like SkillQuest that do amazing work in this space, Hack the Gap that does amazing work with hackathons. And so those are some of our partners we bring to the table. And we continue to add new folks on that make sense for this work that we're doing.
That's great. Thanks, Hal, for sharing that. I appreciate it. I want to ask you, too, a little bit. Let's go back to that ranking piece, right? So first I got to ask, who's number one? Who's doing this well?
If I had to guess, based on what I'm seeing with gaming, it's some of the bigger markets like New York, LA, and Texas. They seem to be flying when it comes to understanding how to bring in technology, but also jobs of the future. So they're winning a lot of bids for anything that's being built. They're going to those spaces. Companies that are doing innovation are also in those spaces. And I would have to guess that it's part of the pipeline that's being built there, particularly high school.
Yeah, it's too bad to hear that because Minnesota's got a great history with tech. If you go back to Cray Research and the significant impact on the world that company had, you would think that we would be a lot further along, especially with innovative companies like the Mayo Clinic and stuff too. Well, and we've got a lot of great Fortune 500 companies locally. You would want to assume we'd be a little bit higher on that list, but I guess that's where the opportunity is. So maybe let's back up a little bit. What drove you into this space? Obviously, you saw a gap and you wanted to fill it, but what was kind of your personal passion around this?
Yeah, great question. First, I want to give you some good news. We were 50th last year, and we are up to 48. And we passed legislation. And we passed legislation in 2023 to also start solving this. So I do think Minnesota's serious about turning the corner here. As far as what kind of got me in this space, or what kind of woke me up, if you will, 20 years of retail was fantastic for me. And not soft lines, but hard lines. Apple, Best Buy, Circuit City. I had technicians, salespeople never selling tech. For me, it was like a wonderland. I love being there. I love developing the young people into professionals. The part where we solve problems when customers will come in distraught and the impact we can make by doing our jobs and doing it well. And so being in that environment, it was very special for me. I look forward to going to work every single day. If people say retail, you were looking at, and more importantly, I get to serve young people and help them understand how these skills will forever serve them and their futures. And then with Best Buy, I actually ended up being the director for the Team Tech Centers of our program operations. So then I was able to take all these skills and bring it to this philanthropy space where we were partnering with 501c3s and Girls Club, YMCAs, and I'll do some of the work that I'm talking about, closing these gaps. And honestly, it was fascinating. We had everything. They had everything, 3D printers to a professional recording studio. The challenge is it's very expensive. This was a $500,000 investment. And so from a sustainability standpoint, Kurt, from a standpoint of being able to reach more people, the model just is not able to do that. It's not built to do that. The other thing that I noticed they were missing was anything with gaming. And so I started to really look into this, try to understand it. And so for me, as I recognized that we need to meet young people where they are and that gaming is a universal marketer, I thought my next step that made sense was for me to go to a gaming company. So I actually joined Wisdom Gaming that used to be out in Mall of America. It was at that moment that I saw the Minnesota Varsity League, the impact this has on our young people, how their eyes lit up, but also that it crossed all barriers, Kurt. race, gender, it didn't matter. Everyone was in this space. And I said, there's something special here that needs to be discovered in a way that isn't just about gaming. I think gaming is amazing. I think it's a great way to get, but then how do we connect this to careers? No different than football does. You go play football, you get a scholarship, you just probably go pro. But you could go to college, get a degree, and get a career, right? Yeah, I believe that same opportunity exists with gaming, except that there's a lot more careers that pay a whole lot more money because technology is where it's at. We saw what our president, our new president has talked about with AI and the jobs that'll be behind that. And really it is where the future is going. So understanding that for our young people is critical. And so I want to make sure that there's a bridge there. So communities that are in rural spaces, inner cities are not being left behind, because I could see that being the new red line if we aren't careful.
Yeah. And personally, I've experienced that transformation myself as well. I mean, you know, my oldest son did coding ninjas a few times, right? Where what it's great is that they're like, yo, you're going to learn how to program games. Well, guess what? You learn how to program. So it's kind of, you know,
Right.
kind of, you know, they learn how to make their own games, but they're also learning how to program and use computers, you know, because, you know, when my son wanted his first PC to play games on, you know, part of my requirements was he had to actually learn like how the computer works, you know, and you know, like he had to learn like how to restart it, how to change the settings, how to do storage management, right, on the computer, like manage how many games he had versus how much files and what his resolution size were and all these different things. So, you know, there was a lot of, and so like I said, that's just a small like personal home experience. And so once I heard about what you're doing, like I thought, oh wow, if you really scaled this thing the way Hal is talking about it, it could be life-changing for people. And I'm guessing you've seen some real transformation since you've started this.
Yeah, for me, transformation also in this evolving of how we get this right so that it's not a one shoe fits all, but it's different for every community. Some of our partnerships that we're starting to kick off will go from community centers to libraries, actually, Kurt, which makes me excited. We can bring in what I call a pod, which is I set up 6 machines, and we're able to engage young people that want to do videography and want to capture and help us create a highlight reel and help us set up the social media site, as well as build the computers first and foremost, get them on a server together, make sure that they understand how to maintain them. Of course, out a couple games, we'll get become experts at in esports, but then get started in a hackathon, as well as they're learning these things. They understand, okay, there's a national tournament for this particular esports. I have to play this much, but I also have to learn these other milestones as I'm going. So for us, it's fun, it's engaging. And what we're learning from young people is all these other things they want to get into, including what you do, which is podcasting. Very popular, right? Oh, we're asking like, how do we make that part of the gaming experience? And now we're actually starting to add AI to be a coach during this process. I should say, what's my next steps? I've done this. What should I learn next? It can actually help guide that career path and also tell you what jobs are out there, what competencies you have to learn, and what's the best games to actually play to learn those competencies. So we're starting to put all this together in a way that is seamless and really easy, because we understand it's got to be intuitive. And then the last part is our people are not on LinkedIn. They don't understand how to build their body of work and tell their story. And so the process with the app is going to be helping them tell that story in a succinct way that actual employers care about. Nobody really wants to brag about themselves, right? And the reality is that there's a lot of things automated. So you're not able to get a job as easily. And so if your job is gaming, how do you tell that story in a compelling manner that makes me still want to hire you?
Right. Yes, exactly. Because in those industries too, they're not just looking for hard skills either. They're also looking for people that can work in teams, right? People that can work with other people. So those are skills that, you know, I know schools try very hard to work on, but they don't always work out as well in a public school setting as maybe they do. But, you know, and I'll be honest, like my son plays a lot of Roblox and he's got teams and they've got shorthand to talk to each other. They know exactly who's where, when. They know what their roles are. They've got it all figured out, you know, and I think it's a very powerful experience. And I talk to him all the time about translating that into the real world. And you know, and he's like, oh, I'm a little nervous, but I'm like, you know, I hear you when you're on your game. You're like over there, go, you know. It's like, it's no different in real life, to be honest with you, to be a leader of people and managing people, right?
And Kurt, that's actually a perfect example of some of the competencies that gaming alone won't create for you versus being on an esports team. The collaboration, the strategy, leadership that comes with it. These are all things your son's learning, doing exactly that. And again, they have a hard time conceptualizing that these are real skill. Part of that is helping them build that confidence that these are real things that are valuable in the marketplace. And so,
Yeah. Being able to show them the one-to-one comparison between, like as you done, right? Leading team of tech experts and telling them what their priorities are today, this week, this year, explaining to them, holding them to those priorities and being able to manage them up or out if need be, right? So, and I can definitely see any type of sports being a part of that. And that's what we've had historically, right? Is that we've, the typical team sports in school, right? If you're on the basketball team or if you're on the skiing team or whatever the case may be, is that you're kind of getting a learn of those skills there. You take that to college, you take it to the next level, and then hopefully you can leave and take on those roles. But I think, again, for especially for neurodivergent people, the idea of gaming being able to be that confidence booster, because maybe they're not as comfortable out on the court in front of hundreds or thousands of people, right? It might be a good way to build that confidence. And I could see it in my son, who's autistic, and it's just a fantastic area for him to really express himself and be able to test those skills, right? To test what he likes about it, right? Because not everybody wants to manage people.
One of my favorite analogies I tell people our age, Kurt. Now, you are a tech man, which I love and adore about you, right? So when you and I talk, I know you naturally get all this, right? You can talk, if you will. But when I tap into a parent that is just kind of beside themselves, that their young person and their child is so into gaming, what I share with them, I ask them, have you ever seen the movie The Matrix? And they say, yeah, I actually have. It's one of my favorite movies. I'm like, great. I'm like, you ever when that thing in the back of Neo's head, and Neo comes out and he says, I know karate. And Morpheus says, show me. I said, then they went back and he put it into action. But I said, that is where we're moving. I said, so if I could tell you, I could put you in a virtual reality world, augmented reality, which is a real thing, show you a skill, you actually practice it, actually use the hand nodules to do it, and you're in a 3D world. That's a real thing you just learned. Just because you didn't do it in person didn't mean that you didn't learn it. And so we have to think different, no different than there's careers in podcasting and being an influencer, and you make a lot of money. Just because we didn't do it, just because we watch TV, they watch YouTube, they watch TikTok. Okay. We have to get out of our own way and our limitations of what we believe when it comes to technology. And so that's why, for me, Kurt, half the battle isn't just helping our kids. They're easy. They want this, right? Half of it is talking to grown-ups that don't quite understand it and getting them comfortable, because reality is this. The baby boomers took 10 years to adopt the VCR. Today, technology is adopted while it's still in beta, right? And that would never happen with the boomers, right? They said, absolutely not. I want to wait for it. They're well tested. Today's these young people grow up with technology. They embrace it immediately. And so it's just a generational gap, as the people that hold the dollars still think a little differently, and the people are saying, I need something different that engages me differently. My attention span isn't as long, and this is what gives me energy. And I like to do multiple things at once. If I can learn in that, I could do it for 10 hours. Matter of fact, I proved it because I just gained for 10 hours. I know I can do it, right? Yep. Now you take that and you bring that into the workspace, and all of a sudden that same person is resilient. They know how to problem solve, they're resourceful, and they turn out to be a rock star. By the way, because they did esports, they know how to collaborate with others, work well with their peers, and all the things that matter. They understand their lanes and all the things you want in a good.
Yeah, well, and to your point, though, too, adding on to that is there's a competitive spirit there as well, right? They're competing against others, but competing against themselves. Mm-hmm. They've got a sense of self-worth, right? I guess is kind of what I'm getting at, right? Where they feel that they're making an impact, and that they can see what that impact is. And I think that's one of the things that I remember even as a youth was, I'm just, I don't want to be one of those people that just joins the masses and, just kind of does the 9 to 5 and works for the weekend, right? Because I remember one of my first jobs was at a very large company, and a lot of the people I worked with, work was just a means to an end so they can get to the cabin for the weekend or something. It wasn't something they were passionate about the work, So for me, work was a big part of defining who I was as a person. And for those types of folks, I find that it's very hard to follow those typical paths that your parents might have planned out for you, where, oh, I'm just going to go get a degree and just work my way up until I can retire, and then life starts.
Yeah. And with technology today and the speed and the movement of it, going to school for 4 years doesn't make a lot of sense for our young people. Getting certified yearly does, however, make sense. As long as you have the foundation and you understand most things will work off of this kind of foundation, learning new skills or a new technique or a new platform doesn't or isn't very challenging. And again, our young people embrace change. They really like new and exciting things, especially they understand what those things can do. And so again, I don't think we've ever been in a better place. And the other thing is, there's an entrepreneur spirit that's connected to this. I know you were naming it's solopreneur. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Right. And so there's new lanes in entrepreneurship that didn't exist now because of technology and how inexpensive they can be, where you can run a business, for you to be on your phone or something of that nature and really create quite a far where they are versus making them think the way they think is wrong. So yeah,
it makes sense. So what advice would you have? Let's say I'm a parent listening to this and I've got a kid in gaming, and I like the things that Hal's talking about. What's some advice? Number one, you said, obviously this passion, and maybe we can find ways to redirect it into more positive ways. What's usually your first talking points with parents in this area?
My first talking points is get involved. I think what parents sometimes fall down is because we don't get it and we don't understand it, and we might even be a little scared of it. Right. We don't get involved. I've always purposely used apps that I would never normally use, but I used it so that I could, one, be an advocate for my young people or my kids at the time they were young, and make sure that they understood how to behave themselves without making them feel like they need to hide things from me. But I needed to understand it for myself. And for parents, what I would say is our platform, where a lot of that's going to be helping parents understand first couple steps they can do to get involved, helping their kid and support them in gaming, where they can go for their kids to do it on a team versus by themselves. Mm-hmm. And I would share with them that there is some healthiness in them praying and doing that by themselves. But I would really tell parents, really encourage them to get into a esports team, something that allows for there to be a community. One, it helps with depression. It helps with that isolation that young people feel like. We all need to feel like we have a community. But the other part that it does is it really teaches them those people skills that honestly will be the difference between how they have success in not just school, but in their lifetime. And so that's what I would tell parents. And then really encourage them, right? When I say encourage them, there are national tournaments and other resources that we'll make available that parents should research. And then we'll also be sharing what careers are connected to a lot of those same skills you learn in gaming that are out there. Remember that the average tech job pays $101,000 now. I think most parents would be pretty proud of that. And by the way, your kid, I'm not saying he shouldn't go to school, or depending on how great they are with these things and how intuitive they are when it comes to technology, a lot of them can skip and go right into a job. As long as they know how to show up as a professional, really scale pretty fast and making very good money and really buy a house and do all the things that we really want our kids to go out and do in this lifetime.
Yeah, I think it's so valuable because there's so many, and I listen to a lot of people, especially just talk about, and I know, as you mentioned, it crosses genders, but men in particular are in a weird place these days because you're seeing more women are graduating college than men are. There's a real dip in what men's capabilities and the amount of investment in men that's happening out there. And the idea that, obviously gaming skews a bit more towards men and boys, but the idea is that there's the role models out there for men and boys is not kind of what it used to be. And hopefully there's some good sports. There's a few sports people out there and stuff that I think are good, but as we find out, a lot of stuff comes to light after the fact that where you're like, not such a great role model to be thinking about. And so for me, while it's great to idolize these big sports stars and these people or YouTubers or things like that, there's so many people in your community already that are doing similar type things, and finding those people that maybe are 5 steps ahead of you, but 1 step ahead of you, 2 steps ahead of you in terms of skill and ability, and being able to partner with them and work with them can be such a push especially at an impressionable age, right?
I can agree more. I didn't really think about it the way that you just shared it, Kurt, but you're right. There isn't the same, I think about when I grew up, that was a very long time ago. I don't want to completely age myself, but me and you, Kurt, are around the same age, so you did what I'm saying. There were more folks that we had that were pretty special in what they did, and I want to say were very safe. And yeah, we do skew ahead with young men. Of course, we want to make sure young ladies feel comfortable in this space as well. And I would also share that biology proves that men are more likely to be able to focus on a thing and see that thing almost like a human being, where biology says young ladies or women naturally are better at nurturing, right? And these spaces make a lot of sense for our young men. I also think about a couple years ago, Kurt, when young people were still in their hands up, stolen, simply I was able to get a video up on TikTok, had no outlet. And so instead, chose to do something mischievous. Not that they're bad kids. They just had too much time in their hands and nowhere to direct that energy, that brilliance. And instead, it ends up like they're criminals. Instead of saying this person should be building and shit for NASA, instead they have a record instead because they didn't know what else to do with that talent, if you will.
Oh, 100%. And it's that crowd mentality too. Like I mentioned, the people you're hanging out with, it just escalates, right? I had bad influences when I was younger and I got in trouble, and it was always, because one friend was daring the next friend or trying to look cooler to the next friend. And, as as a young man, like you can't not look cool to your friends. Otherwise, you might as well jump off a bridge. Right. So for me, like, I realized like who I was hanging out was a big part of who I was becoming as a man. Right. And who I wanted to become. And that was one great thing that I learned from my father is that, you're kind of how the people you hang out with kind of are a representation of who you are as a person. And so if you're not constantly trying to improve that group, if you're not trying to, and that doesn't mean throwing people away. In my mind, it's about adding on and adding more value in where you want to go as a person versus, hanging out where you used to be. And there's value in who you used to be, but there's so much more value on where you want to go.
And there's always saying that if you're the smartest in the room, it's time to get out the room, Kurt. But, the proud that young people is they so darn find their community and we find the community because we want to be comfortable. But what you and I know now at our age is that there's no growth in the comfort zone. Simply not. But I think there's some value in it. I also think that having mentors in this space, those are the folks that can help you the most, because reality is it's rare you're going to find people that are your age that are exceptional that way.
Sure.
But have mentors that are a little older, maybe college students or even guys like you and I that have a vested interest in young people in their careers to really help guide them, cares enough to hold you accountable, right? Because that sometimes can be scary, but the reality is we all need it. Those are the moments we got better. But also cares enough to make sure that they're advocating for you, they're making the connections for you that helps change your life, because sometimes it's what you know, but a lot of times it's who you know. And knowing that you've proven yourself by every time you were challenged, you showing resilience, you being able to take that feedback and apply it. Those things will give confidence to those that are mentoring you to be able to put their name on you and advocate for you when job opportunities make sense for you.
Yeah, 100%, because they've already experienced it and they can attach their reputation to yours and feel comfortable about doing it, because that's what you're doing when you are vouching for someone or referring somebody in any aspect. And so, you've got to have that sort of reputation precede you, if you will, right? And to your earlier point about getting out of your comfort zone, I mean, I think that's the challenge to the parents as much as it is to the youth, right? Is that just because this train has left the station, so if you could just watch it go by if you want. But I'm giving you a ticket. Like you can get on right now and come for the ride, because it is going and it's happening and people are on this train and they're having a great time.
One thing that I think would be a miss for me not to share is when I was young, I remember I played sports. Sports wasn't a thing then, but I remember going to tournaments, big tournaments, and it was in those moments that I had the most reputation. The talent was unbelievable. It made me see, or helped me see, what was possible. And it helped me level set where I was at and where I needed to be if I was going to get great. And I share that because being in esports competitions, being live at competitions for parents, this is when your young person is going to have that own self-evaluation. This is where a team has to evaluate where we are, how much more like playing we need to do in order to get to this place. Look how in sync they were. They get to see what great looks, and then they get to challenge themselves and go back and apply those.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I experienced the same thing growing up, and it was hugely powerful, not just for me, but I remember going to my first national competition, like you had mentioned, and I remember my dad was just blown away because he had no idea like how big this sport and things really were, and it was just like I could tell it was the first time I ever saw him kind of nervous for me, and he was very strong. He was a very strong man and very confident man, but I could tell this was the first time I ever saw any kind of weakness, I guess, in him, and it was very comforting to me, because you could see how much he actually cared about my health and safety and things like that. And so, again, to your point, the idea of if the parents are not as excited as the youth, it's an uphill battle.
Yeah. It's funny. I love that you share that, because you're right. That generation is show very much vulnerability, but when you get into the right environment, sometimes you can't even fight it. I remember being myself shaken to the core, seeing the competition and trying not to psych myself out that we couldn't win a game against some of these guys. But it was also in those moments that you went back and you practiced, you got better because you realized I'm not as good as I thought. And so I think it's good and healthy for parents to see that these things can lead to other things, that it is unbelievably competitive, and see that fire in their young person. Say, I didn't even know that side of you existed. That's the people literally break out of their shell and are never the same persons in those moments in extreme competition, where the very best of you come at, you either fight or fight. And in those moments, because you have a team and it's not just you by yourself, you typically fight and do this. And so that's why esports for me is so exciting, because it really, to me, encompasses all the things we love, right? And it takes this thing that we can see as a bad vice, and it could turn it to an amazing tool for real change and for a career. And so for parents, I would just tell them, embrace what you don't understand. I get it. There's people like me and you out who want to advocate, also want to help our young people understand play. That's great. But let me show you what else is connected to this. No different than your phone. Your phone could be your office if you let it, right? And it can mix that smart. Or it can just be for entertainment. It's really about your mindset. And for you to know what's available, what's possible, then I can go do it. But first, I got to know what's possible. And then it's connected to my gifts.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and this is a story that's as old as time. It's not even just gaming, but I would say, look at the careers of people like Dennis Rodman or Shaquille O'Neal, for example. These aren't guys that grew up playing basketball, really. They got into it much in age, and they found they were good at it, and then they had to figure out how to work into a team versus some of the youth that, they play basketball in teams like, still forever. They start out there, right? And these are some of the greatest players that ever played the game. And so, there's no, well, they're kind of aged out of the ability to get good at this thing or to be a part of this, right? There's no sort of cap where it's like, well, like ice skaters, like if they're not really good by age 7, you're kind of screwed. Because really, they only got about 10 more years of competitive work with them. But again, you look time and time again at some of our, the greatest people ever play sports. A great number of them were not prodigies by any sense of the word. They were not just born to play. They weren't Michael Jordan, where they could just will themselves 2 inches taller or something, right? These are people that had a lot of things working against them that then showed up and really were able to take things to the next level. So to your point about especially some of the youth that you're working with, these are things that people have told them are not good uses of their time, are not going to lead to anything. And here Hal's showing up and saying, whoa, you got it all backwards. This is actually a super highway, to where you want to be. I think it's fantastic, Hal.
I was so funny. Well, and I love that. And thank you for sharing it just that way, because that's exactly how I feel sir. You literally nailed it. You think about the guy, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie about Queen, and the father didn't want him skiing, right? He wanted him to be a boxer. And look, to this day, we talk about him. Like Freddie Mercury still talked about still today. Yep. But my point is, parents, sometimes we just can't see it, right? We have a vision for our kids, and sometimes we just have to let our kids do what they've really been working hard at. We just don't get it, but you just don't know what your kid's done until they have a platform to really show you. And then you can be proud, and then you can get behind them, but it is having an open mind and with the right structure around it, it can really be something very magical.
I think it's fantastic, Hal. Okay. All right. I could talk to you all day, but we should cut it short. If I'm a parent and I'm listening to this and I want to get in touch, or want to find out more, I want to maybe have a chat with you, Hal, about my kid and what they're up to and what those opportunities might be. Where do I find you? Where do I find out more info?
Absolutely. So you go to D.G.I.org, D.Y.G.I.org. Soon to be redone. So it'll look very different here in the next week or so, but it'll give you a lot of insight and help you understand what we believe the gaps are, how this all works together, and what your young people will learn by being part of our program, and then where we're going to be in the program. The other part, you can email me directly at halreynolds@dg.com. I'm happy to always answer questions. I get involved. I do public speaking. So if you want me to come to your schools and things of that nature to, again, continue to help move this narrative, change how we're doing this. Again, as Minnesotans, we're for it. And then I'm happy to be wherever I'm needed to change the understanding of this and really advocate for our young people to do more game, but in a way that's more purposeful.
Yeah, I love it, Al. I think you're doing amazing work, and I appreciate that you are doing this work. Thank you. Just, from someone who is not only a fan of the tech scene in Minnesota and hopes it gets better, but for the sacrifices and for the energy you put into it, I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Kurt. I appreciate this opportunity to be on this amazing platform and being able to share the stage with you. It was an absolute pleasure.